I mean, poor Whittingham. Whittingham just muttered under his breath while, and this, of course, is how the audience pictures it, while literally holding the string at the end of a bag of tea and dipping it into his cup of morning tea. He just announced that on the drive home yesterday, he ate that one.
I did. I stepped in it, and the dropping of the tea bag is a metaphor for me self-flagellating last night, beating myself up for how much of a moron I sounded like.
What'd you do last night?
I know,
self-flagellated.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Let's help Whittingham.
No, I don't want help nor need
Let's
help.
help him flagellate.
No, I feel like shit.
Let's all do it together.
I think you owe all of us an apology, to be frank.
You know what?
Not just Jess,
yes,
all of us.
All of us.
Because
everyone.
I saw what was going on
Everyone
there,
in the known universe.
and it was like all the men on the LeBatard show said X, and it was like, no. One person said that, and it was you. We say enough stupid things, and we have enough Jujus and Ryan Cortez out there clipping everything that we say to try to get it to burn us. This one is on you, friends.
Let me explain to the audience that may not have been listening to or known that it was listening to a private meeting a minute ago.
Witty insulted women.
Witty made
the day before International Women's Day, too, I might add.
Wow, good timing.
Goodness me.
Yeah, so I can imagine Whittingham. I really can. Because if Whittingham misspeaks on a broadcast, okay, if there's a hiccup of misspeak on a broadcast, he's such a perfectionist that I can imagine him, what Boog Shambi calls gnawing your right arm off, just because you feel so bad about a mistake that you've made. And on the show yesterday, we were talking about things that as children we imagined would be a lot better in the future, 20, 30 years in the future, flying cars, etc. And the starting point of the conversation was Jessica saying she thought that childbirth was going to be something that would be a lot better. And then from the back of the room is shouted the grenade, it's called a C-section.
Well, not even, it's called a cesarean section. I had to be even more of a dick and use the actual scientific term as opposed to just the C-section, which is more commonly referred to. Yeah, I sounded like a dick, and I am very regretful of that. I don't like sounding like a dick.
And it's okay. Well,
you should get to work on that, man.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be the one forgiving you. You can tell Jess when she gets here tomorrow. It's her day off. It is not a great way to celebrate international. What are you laughing about back there, Billy? What are you doing?
Nothing.
I mean, Stugotz and I are still waiting for the apology to us. You know what I mean? For getting lumped in with this.
I apologize to everyone. To everyone.
It sounded more like one of those "I'm sorry you misunderstood what I meant" situations.
No. No, I mean, how much more clear can I get than I sounded like a dick?
You know what? I think that's a pretty good. That's a new way to apologize in a way that to have people believe you, where you just go out there and like, you know what? I'm an asshole. And instead of just I'm sorry or whatever, you just go even stronger and you call yourself the names before others can call you the names.
Yeah, I sounded like an asshole, and I was wrong on top of that. And I was trying yesterday to do like if I were to defend myself, how would I defend myself? And I can't defend myself. I was wrong.
I can defend you, Witty.
No,
not today. Wait till next Tuesday. Not today, Greg.
This is great. This will not be mansplaining at all.
Okay. You don't want this defense?
I don't want it.
You don't want
okay.
Well, hey, there's a lot of stuff to say here. First of all, whenever somebody says the phrase "I was a dick," I always think of my brother Dick Cote, who never in his life has said that phrase, even though he literally is a dick.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to say about a cesarean section is that...
Hold on, please. We want to be careful here because I am very worried about where he's headed here.
I really want to hear this.
Yeah.
I mean,
a C-section really damages a woman's body. You might get around the pain, but your insides are being taken out. Like you can imagine the recovery process for something like that.
A quick parenthetical, the old Fort Lauderdale Strikers coach, a German man named Eckhard Krautzen, used to refer to a narrow victory as a cesarean section because I guess it's, whatever. But my wife...
Thanks for the note.
Okay.
This is your defense, by the way. Okay?
No, that was a parenthetical.
He's about to drop bona fides here.
Okay, here's the defense.
C-section bona fides?
Yes, here's the defense. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but both of my sons were born via C-section, not natural childbirth. A lot of women back then, maybe not today. I'm not speaking for Jess and her age group now, but a lot of women back in the day thought that a C-section was easier in the long run than natural childbirth. And so I don't fault women for having had a C-section. And you know, speaking back when, a C-section was considered to be a positive.
I don't
not
think
a
anyone
negative.
was faulting anyone for a C. Let's just, Woody's sorry. We'll move on. Happy International Women's
let's
Day.
turn the
everyone.
page.
We don't know what we're
Thank
talking
you, Dad.
about.
Yeah, thank you.
For all your
everybody.
thoughts on
Good
this.
try,
It-
Greg.
no, it was important to
It
get
was
your
important.
to get your thoughts.
Thank
on
God
this.
for the
Yeah.
striker note, too.
Yeah, Eckhard Krautzen, man. What a cat. Wow. Okay.
Krauts.
Yeah.
What a cat!
Yeah, he was a weird dude.
Meow.
That's a story for another day. That guy. Okay.
What did Stugotz just do?
Meow.
I want the story.
What a cat.
That's what I did.
People don't really call each other cats anymore. Somebody's what a cat that is.
Yeah.
That's
Cool cat. Cool dude.
That was the 50s, though,
Yeah.
right?
Were you
Yeah.
Were you ever anything but a cool cat?
Crazy cat, maybe.
Hmm.
That is one weird
And
cat.
scaredy cat too.
That was a phrase.
Yeah.
Weird cat.
Mhm.
You can also be an odd bird.
For sure. Yeah. Never a smart bird. Always an odd bird.
Greg Cote came in here today, and this could not have been easy for him because Greg Cote.
Walking up the stairs, you mean?
I thought you were going to cough. I thought you were going to cough as you.
He
laughed.
sounds better
Yeah,
today.
yeah,
He
give me
does sound
time.
better. He
Yes.
looks fresher.
Thank you.
But it's hard for me to explain because Greg Cote considers himself such an amazing talent around here, just like I do, just like Stugotz does. It's hard to explain to you what the shipping container has to wrangle regularly. I'd say that Mike Ryan and Greg Cote have a wonderful tension for show purposes, but that Greg Cote does a lot to frustrate Mike Ryan, and Mike Ryan tells Greg Cote in a way that might make Greg Cote bristle every once in a while. But families can talk like this because everybody loves each other, but Greg can be someone who gets very angry at us. And he came in here today and he was glowing, not just because he was the star of the musical and because he can't believe how good it was, but he has to give you your begrudging respect as someone who he does not get along with all the time with 100% peace. He had to come in here and genuflect because he was amazed at how that musical sounded.
Yeah, it really did. I was complimenting Mike and by extension JT Daly, of course. A compliment like that generally has a rebound compliment where he would have said, yeah, and you were so great on Back in My Day. He didn't say that to me, but still, I felt like he appreciated my compliment despite no reciprocation.
You were just fishing for a compliment.
Yeah, but there was no
rebound
reciprocation.
compliment.
No reciprocation whatsoever, but that's fine, Mike.
love that.
That's fine. Don't worry about it.
Because sometimes you give it out just to get one back. You're
Exactly.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
In my dad's defense, he did compliment the musical on his own podcast without Mike around or JT. I think he actually was. He's like, normally as a writer, I need to change my lyrics when I get handed a sheet
Yes,
of paper.
correct.
But here he was like, these work.
I
These
did.
met Greg Cote's approval.
and by the way, not to plug the Greg Cote Show podcast, the new episode's out now, but on that new episode, our resident musician Yeti Blanc does a pretty detailed analysis of his opinion on the Big Game musical, and he particularly credits the performance and the surprisingly good singing voice of two particular individuals. So check out the podcast to find out who.
You said at the start of that not to plug.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me like the only reason you had any of those thoughts in a vocal fashion was to plug.
Yeah, correct. That's exactly right. You know,
Why-
it's when people say not to brag, but it's always a humble brag that follows.
When he says not to plug, he's plugging it, Dan.
Yeah, it's just a language construct.
But you had
You're
another,
a writer, you know that.
You had another thought at the beginning of that was never finished because you got the detour of and not to plug, and I thought there was going to be a
In
point.
Greg's defense, though, it was brought up. Chris brought it up,
Yeah.
not Greg.
Thank
and
you,
once
Billy.
he went in Rome, you know what I mean? We got to
Yeah,
get there.
I got to get there. I got to slide in a reference to the podcast when I can because I may not be teed up for it. You know, it may be something I got to go in and grab real quick like a thief.
Danny Valencia writes on Twitter wondering why it is that Mike Trout has 1.9 million Instagram followers as someone who's the best in his sport, best in the world, maybe historically the best. No, Billy, you don't think he's the
Seems
best?
high, honestly, for Mike Trout. I mean, what has Mike Trout ever done that's interesting that you're like, let me see what he's up to on a Wednesday afternoon?
Agreed.
And Danny Valencia was wondering why Tyler Herro has 2.3 million
Because he's cool.
followers.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say look at the official Instagram accounts of Major League Baseball and the NBA. The NBA has 65 million followers. Major League Baseball has 8
But talk about a
million.
personality
not 8
contrast.
people, but I was surprised to see it was that high.
Is that particular example because of the Jack Harlow video? Jack Harlow had a Tyler Herro song, so that could have helped his popularity.
Yeah, no, he crosses into pop culture. NBA players tend to cross into pop culture. You don't really hear a lot of popular musicians name dropping Mike Trout.
But what has Mike Trout done or shown you off the field where you would rush to follow him on social media?
Mike Trout's second most recent Instagram post is a cartoon of a trout, like the fish, drawn on paint with a baseball hat on it, and in the bubbles there's a number 27. And then you go like 3 posts away from that, and it's just a bunch of bat handles. That's comedy. And then before that is him taking batting practice. So if you want to follow that,
BP.
at Mike Trout.
I saw he made his statement on the MLB lockout via Facebook post, which I think is perfect for Mike Trout. This is not to discredit his greatness. I think it actually sings his praises. But here's what I know about Mike Trout. Everyone for the last 10 years has told me how great he is. I haven't seen it for myself. I don't watch Angels games. I barely watch the sport. He's far away and he doesn't do anything to grab my attention. And it's one of those things. People talk about him the same way that they talk about one of the greats from yesteryear. I imagine all Mike Trout footage looks black and white and grainy. I have no frame of reference for someone that is playing presently.
I can't believe that our show has lived the lifetime of baseball stars being among the biggest in sports. And then even if it's an Ohtani where it's a novelty that you've not seen before since Ruth, that baseball doesn't have anyone who can grab popular and trendy.
But I tuned in for the Ohtani home run derby. Whatever it is, he has it. It was appointment viewing for me.
Well, he had it.
And he has 1.3 million followers. So, like, even him, like, I guess he's the biggest star right now, and he's less than Tyler.
But the Angels are never good.
But Mike, you're not tuning in to see Ohtani anymore, are you?
No, I tuned in to watch the home run derby. If Mike Trout was in a home run derby, I don't think I'd tune in.
June 8th, 2019. There's some sticks, and it's more baseball bat handles. He's really doing this wrong because he has 2 cute dogs, but I only see 1 picture of them. If there was more Trout dogs, I bet you Trout dogs would get more followers than Mike Trout. We need more picture of the Trout dogs. Do they have names? I'll get back to you on this.
Is Bryce Harper the biggest star? Like, is he the guy that's like would be thought of as he's doing it right in baseball?
It's got to be like Aaron Judge or something. You got to play for one of those teams, do you not? You have to play for either the Dodgers or the Yankees to be this, correct? It's not even Ohtani's on the West Coast, but you can't be on the West Coast. You got to be on one of these teams, a star on one of these big teams.
I'd say Dodgers, Yankees, Mets, Cubs, those teams. Is Mookie Betts? He's the biggest star and the best team. Is he a big star?
Not really.
I mean, the biggest star in baseball is not going to be as big as the biggest star in the NFL or the NBA. Mike Trout almost literally could not be any duller personality-wise. And can you imagine, referencing Ohtani, can you imagine if the best cornerback in the NFL also was a Pro Bowl receiver? If there was an Ohtani in the NFL, he would be a national sensation in a way that Ohtani is not.
He just doesn't cross over because in baseball circles, Mike Trout is the first name that comes to mind when you're talking about greatness. And it's almost word association. Anytime you're talking about baseball, you eventually get to the name Mike Trout.
Right.
It's just no one that doesn't follow that sport hears that name.
There was a Juno Trout Instagram account, but it was deactivated because they got Josie. So there's Juno Josie Trout if you want to follow his dogs. Right now, only 6,500 followers. We need to do better, guys. JUNOJOSIETROUT. Juno Josie Trout if you want to follow Mike Trout's dogs.
I actually think that like baseball fans right now are being underrepresented in the conversation around the MLB lockout, and generally underrepresented in national media, because national media people gravitate towards what is helpful towards the content that I'm producing, and baseball no longer is, because it's just not a national sport. There are millions of people right now that are desperate to get baseball back because they care about their team. That's the thing that's changed about baseball, is that there are still many millions of ardent, passionate baseball fans. They just care about the team that's in their market. The national decline of baseball does not mean that there aren't fewer baseball fans. It just means that they, like, if you're in Miami, you don't care about what's going on in Seattle, but people in Seattle do. You just care about what's in it's a regional sport, which I don't think necessarily means that there are fewer baseball fans. It's just different.
I do think it means there are fewer baseball fans. I think there are fewer baseball fans today than there were in, say, 2002. I think they have an older fan base. This is irrefutable. That fan base is getting older, eventually dying off. That fan base is not on social media, as seen by some of the metrics we presented to you in this hour. I do think there are far fewer fans. The ratings also bear this out. They bear that out for almost every sport outside of the NFL.
Well, what's quantifiable is that baseball has not yet bounced back from the pandemic, from the diminished crowds and the no crowds, in a way that the other sports instantly have. I mean, the New York Yankees, pardon my voice.
You okay there?
The New York Yankees averaged like 25,000 fans last season when the stadium was wide open for everybody, and that was like a 50% drop from what they usually do, and that was seen across the league. So the pandemic has hurt baseball attendance-wise in a way that it hasn't the other sports.
But Woody is right. It's become a regional sport where it's still popular, but popular within its own cities. There are very few things that resonate nationally with the audience. It might be the Yankees. It might be the Red Sox. It might be if the Yankees play the Red Sox. It might be the Dodgers. It might be Fernando Tatis, but that's about it, you know?
Right, which is a shame for the sport that they are not able to produce those kinds of stars that cross over. But the reason why there's a lockout right now is because there's so much money to fight over. That is not the sign of a sport that's in decline. That's a sign of a sport that's changed, and the players need to get on with getting more of that money. But there's still a ton of money for them to share, and there's still a ton of baseball fans.
Mike Trout's the second most followed baseball player. The most followed baseball player, David Ortiz. And he hasn't played baseball in 5 years.
Big Bobby.
He took it with him. I was going to say that Jeter took it with him, but it was Big Papi who took it with him, right?
A-Rod did too.
The stardom of that age, of Manny Ramirez, of Boston and New York, playing in national games that reminded you of the 70s and the 80s and the 90s.
I'm not throwing dirt on baseball. I think the TV contracts obviously is a sustainable business model, probably not to the tune that it has been over the years. That's probably going to come back down to earth. But the history of baseball is a sport that took advantage of a time. It captured the zeitgeist of the American spirit during World War II. And it really, really blew up in popularity because it was a fully fleshed out league. It had an infrastructure that was second to none at the time, and it took advantage of the times. And right now it's a victim of the times because it just flatly doesn't age well. Think of all the other things that haven't aged well since World War II. You can lump baseball in that pile, I think.
A-Rod has 3.9 million followers. So I guess the list that I was looking at doesn't count him as a baseball player. He's more than that now.
That was quick. What Mike just said, like, that was really quick, Dan. Back in the 90s, like, baseball players were huge stars. Like, that happened very quickly. Where baseball became irrelevant.
You say it happens quickly, but it's been 20 years of pretty obvious. Like, even as these guys were talking about, there were only a few of them. There used to be a ton of them. Yeah. Like there used to be baseball. When you talk about it being the national pastime, had the quarterbacks. Football didn't have the quarterbacks. Like, it wasn't until Marino and Montana and that stuff. And you need stars. This is what I was telling you about when I was talking about the differences in the way basketball and football philosophically operate. Basketball makes it about the individual personalities, and you're seeing now that it's tearing some things apart because the power football is wise to make all the pieces disposable. Football is wise to make sure that it's the brand that comes first. Football is wise to just protect those quarterbacks with rule changes because it's only about 10 of them that you need for all the commercials and for all the broadcasting jobs. You only need like 10 of them, and they protect them, and they don't make stars. But I actually didn't want to have the conversation about baseball. I wanted to have it about Tyler Herro and how basketball is a cultural influencer where they tell you what kind of attitudes and styles are cool. And the Miami Heat has a young player, a young white player, not insignificant, who is 22 years old and can clearly ball with all of them. And he also is being name-checked by Jack Harlow and all the stuff that you need to be whatever it is the next generation of young people embrace that isn't Mike Trout. That is, whatever is rock and roll against Mike Trout, whatever is the rebellion against Mike Trout, Tyler Herro represents that.
He's got some swagger. He's got confidence. He's talented. He's good. He's young. He's good-looking. I will tell you. And he's white. I mean, that certainly factors into
important.
it.
It's important.
I will just tell you this. My daughter follows him on Instagram, my daughter Emma, and she loves him. She thinks he's cute. She wouldn't know Mike Trout if Mike Trout was sitting in our house. But she knows Tyler Herro.
But she might think Mike Trout is cute as well, but there is a person.
Care about him.
If she lived in Anaheim, she might know who Mike Trout is.
There are personality differences there. There are attitude differences, style differences, and Tyler Herro is bringing to the organization of Mickey Arison and Pat Riley something that is young, younger than Jimmy Butler, younger than Kyle Lowry. It's something
young and good.
That helps, but when you have someone who you can groom, because you just were reminding me yesterday that Jason Tatum is 24. 22 is Tyler Herro. That is a young player that you can... If he were the centerpiece of a team right now, that team would not be very good, but he could put up some of these 50-point games you're watching. Because the athleticism leaps off of the court at you. There aren't a lot of guys out there a lot more athletic than him.
I mean, he gave you 31 in 31 minutes last night. Of course he can. If he was starting, he can give you 50.
It's amazing. It doesn't hurt that he's white. It doesn't hurt that he's a human being answering to the name Herro. It doesn't hurt that he's a part of the same South Beach sexy culture that brought LeBron James down here. But the other thing is, as you say, he's becoming a genuine star off the bench. He must lead the league in 20-point games off the bench. He's going to be the sixth man of the year. He's a genuine star beyond all the trappings.
It's funny that you say he's a genuine star because I would say not yet, but I would say he's a star with young people. When I think of a star, I think it's everybody. I think a whole lot of, even with his
I think this is a Miami bias thing. I don't think nationally Tyler Herro is a star.
I don't think so either.
I mean, Jack Harlow is one of the biggest stars in hip hop. He's from Kentucky. I think it's kind of like the Joe Namath thing where people know the name Tyler Herro, whether it be from a trade rumor here or there or because of a huge performance in the playoffs, but that built a little bit of a legend, and he dresses kind of like Joe Namath. Perhaps the star is shining a little too bright considering what he is, but he's on top of that, he's a really good player. He's going to be sixth man of the year.
It starts there, but here's the thing. Tyler Herro thinks he's a star right now.
Carries himself as
it's
such.
The
he
personality.
Carries himself. Yeah, he's got the white sunglasses on in the post-game press conference last night. It was funny.
There's plenty of...
So did Deion Waiters.
He's the anti-Trout.
Not a star.
There's plenty of players in the history of sports that are more famous than they are good. Tyler Herro just so happens to also be really good and has a shot to have his on-court accolades kind of meet up with his off-court persona.
We made fun of and we were joking about the hierarchy of how an athlete takes steps to be deemed worthy by Stugotz of greatness. And the way that an athlete rises to stardom and prominence internationally, it's not, I mean, sometimes it's just boom, arrival, and there it is. But it has to make its way through different streams and audiences, generations, young people. You have to go commercials. You have to be somebody that's being noticed by different audiences. And Tyler Herro right now is still Miami, young people, and basketball people.
Yep.
That's a good start.
Yes.
And now big playoff. It started with a big playoff performance, but now more big playoff performances. And then people get to know beyond what he's wearing to the games. They get to know they're going to have the quotes to go with the performances. If he's playing in big games, they're going to have some spoken swagger and some shown swagger. And the way that stardom arrives, right? is that it gets managed for you now as people identify, oh, that's a place to make influencer investment right there. And so the league will do it too. They're doing it with John Morant. Now the league will support, yes, please bring in a youthful infusion. LeBron is Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah, you were great, but let's go. We need the next class of young people so that we can lure tomorrow's audience.
He's our star now, but that's what the postseason is for, in those moments, and not in a bubble, on the road in front of fans. Because if he breaks Boston's heart, Dan, then Boston's aware of who Tyler Herro is. If he breaks Philadelphia's heart, then Philadelphia is now, and the country is now aware of what Tyler Herro is all about. He has a chance this postseason, Dan, to announce himself to the world.
Stugotz has made the declaration that he has a chance to announce himself to the world.
I am Herro. No, if the biggest star in hip-hop is playing a show in Miami next week, and he wants to rep the Heat on stage, he's going to bring up Butler, and he's going to bring up Herro. Those two.
Bam. Well, I'm just saying, if we're just doing by fame, like Bam would be ahead of Herro.
You think so? No.
Maybe not.
I disagree.
I think
disagree.
Herro's
I think
the
Herro's
second most
ahead of him.
famous.
I
player
think
on
it's
this roster.
JB and Herro.
Mm-hmm.
JB.
Jimmy Buckets.
Victor Oladipo was on The Masked Singer, so don't forget that fame. Nicole Scherzinger wanted to date him.
He looked explosive last night.
He's back.
Thingamajig. That was his character name on The Masked Singer, for those who aren't familiar.
Thank
We
you.
don't remember the music, though.
Thank you for that.
Stugotz, you said something earlier that it kind of stuck with me with regards to baseball. You said that happened fast. 20 years is not a quick period of time. Like, what happened to NASCAR was fast. What happened to hockey was fast. What happened to the UFC after it dipped after an initial burst of popularity, that was fast. This is something that has been prolonged and sustainable. The chart is constantly pointing downward. And this has been a slow burn for 20 years. We're getting to the point where it's a generation that is burying baseball. And other sports like soccer are going to ascend beyond it.
I just say things.
I would add to what you're saying, though, Mike, by pointing out to you that as that sport locks out over money, I do believe that you need to focus. If you don't love, I mean, I know most of you don't want to get into the minutia of what they're arguing about, but larger scale on what your leadership is, because what baseball's been interested in doing for a while is milking as much money out of this thing as you can. Now, if you partner with your players on leadership, maybe you don't have this problem because you're working to market in union with your players to make sure that your sport gets younger. That sport is historically really reluctant to any kind of change. But what I would tell you is those owners, the focus has been, how do we get the most money? And they have buried baseball the last two negotiations because these the people running this are not Marvin Miller anymore. It's Tony Clark. It's a former player. And you should pay attention to that has happened on the watch of those owners who did not know how to make stars of their players because the focus was, how do we make money for us? And it's just so short-sighted that now they fight over the pennies in advanced media and they fight over the new streaming dollars, but they missed entirely because Rob Manfred was in charge of how do I make stars, and they don't know how to do it. They don't have the personality types, and they don't have the culture that will allow Mike Trout to show you his personality if he's not just a meathead with a bat out there. Like they're just now, the Fernando Tatises are coming and some of the young people, and we'll see how baseball supports them, because obviously in order for your sport to have this national resonance that matters with not just young people, but all people, you got to have stars. You cannot have all the pieces be disposable.
It's nice if you have a Tatis Jr. that really wants it and is charismatic, but baseball doesn't need charismatic players to make stars out of them. Think about what we were talking about in the 90s. You think Mark McGwire was charismatic? Barry Bonds was an asshole. They were stars. It's incumbent upon the owners, Major League Baseball as a whole, their television partners, to craft the mythology around these guys to get you to tune in, because otherwise you become boxing, another sport that died real quick because of a lack of stars.
What are you talking about? Jake Paul has revived boxing.
Yes,
Boxing is bigger than ever, I would say, right now. Yeah.
Well, bigger than ever is...
No, bigger than ever.
Okay, but to your point...
Never saw anyone talk about Mike Tyson on TikTok before Jake Paul.
But to your point, Billy, Jake Paul is a star. And he has become one of the most famous pugilists because he's a star.
So I think with baseball, they've just completely lost the mechanism, because I think in some ways the national sports media has lost the way to talk about baseball. I don't think like you put baseball in front of Stephen A. Smith, like it's not first take friendly. It's not debate friendly. Or I guess maybe the national media pundits, like, we talk about soccer sometimes where it's like, even if they did want to talk about soccer on a big national platform, they don't have the facilities to do it. I think baseball is getting to that point where the big national sports media pundits don't know how to turn it into debate that's interesting.
Even that is localized, though, because what I would tell you is the people who are grabbing audience now in baseball are the people who really know what they're talking about, and other people who really know what they're talking about want to learn more about the endlessly fascinating intricacies of that game. And the people who get audiences are, it's like Twitter's a menu. I'm going to go find the people, as opposed to expecting ESPN to just give me the top of the analysis. I'm going to go to MLB Network, and I'm going to go see the guys who've got the advanced metrics, the people who are teaching me what the real value is. I have found interesting watching the way that all of baseball has been made into these pockets of things, right? Instead of it was the national pastime. It was the sport in this country that it was football. Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams was a war hero. Like it was football. It was long before football arrived. This was the sport that mattered.
It had a head start.
Yes.
Yes.
It had the stage to itself for decades.
But it refused to change and evolve into the youth of today. And when Stugotz says that happened fast, Mike's right when he says, no, it hasn't been fast. But it's happened over the stewardship of people who said, no, Mark Cuban, you're too revolutionary for us. No, we don't want you as an owner in our sport with this new money. We're about old money protections, and they got the thing in that sport that signals the victory. Because I didn't read this stat yesterday, and I need to read it to David Sampson. June Lee of ESPN said that the Marlins, they were bought for $158 million, and $38.5 million of that was an interest-free loan. When they sold the team, 15 years later, they sold it for $1.2 billion. The profit was more than $1 billion. If that money had been on the S&P 500, $158.5 million would have become $200 million. The baseball owners, so that's $800 million of difference between our economy and how the baseball franchise here, a stinky one, appreciated. Those owners were only interested in how to make that happen, and they didn't want to turn any of their players into anything. And they did not help any of their players.
Right.
Because it wasn't games. Ortiz and Jeter and A-Rod were doing it, markets, personalities, but the games that they were playing in. You can't tell me that baseball games weren't interesting over the last 20 years, but no stars were emerging from that.
Well, there's no stars. And just going back to Mike's point on the 90s, McGuire and Sosa, they were chasing the last thing that mattered in the sport nationally. The last thing that mattered, the home run records, all that stuff. They were chasing that stuff. And then you had the whole story of whether they were doing it, in a legal way or not, I guess.
But think of all the stars. Ken Griffey Jr.
But Mike,
he had a backwards hat. He wasn't overly charismatic. His style of play was dynamic. But if you talk to him in an interview, you wouldn't exactly be captured by his personality. Most of the baseball stars that you grew up with didn't have a dynamic personality.
But having Ken Griffey Jr. assures you nothing. It doesn't mean that your team's going to win a World Series. Having Mike Trout does not mean. That's the difference. With the stars in the NBA, if you have a Ken Griffey Jr. in the NBA, you're going to win a championship probably. And that's not the case in baseball.
I don't think it's a lack of stars. I really don't. I think it's completely a pace of play thing. Baseball on TV is an oil painting. It's a slow motion sport compared to the other exciting kinetic sports, just visually, just palpably. And that's a real problem. When the average length of a game is 3 hours and 12 minutes, the average, highest ever, that's a fundamental problem that is greater, I think, than the lack of stardom.
I think we're burning up all the capital from producing an original musical as a sports podcast to immediately turn to fixing baseball. But I agree with Greg. The device that I hold in my hand is, I think, single most responsible for killing the sport. Even when I go to a game and I look around, that entire lower level, because of the pace of the game, is stuck in their phones and you miss the action. I think that they should do what MLS did, which was stop trying to be so family friendly. let's make this game an event to go to. It actually lends itself to a party. Chris Whittingham and I, for one hot minute, loved darts more than anything on this planet because going to the games were fun. Going to MLS games are fun. Going to the Kentucky Derby in the pit is fun. No one gives a shit about horse racing. Stop trying to be this bygone era family-friendly sport. Lean into the vices and let's party.
Thought baseball was like ahead on these vices thing, like with the streaming on the phones and stuff. I know they've fallen behind now. Can baseball just be how it is? You guys, if you don't like it, don't watch it. I like baseball. People who watch baseball like it. It's obviously still making money. Enough of you guys. It's fine.
It's funny what you're saying. I just would point to when you're talking during a lockout about leadership. Whatever your opinions are of Manfred, who is simply the symbol for owner leadership. I know many commissioners are unpopular. The lack of vision in that sport when, Chris, you're right, they were way ahead on all the streaming media stuff. They were damn near 10 years ahead of everybody else on the young thing that you needed to have. But when the interest is only in making money and you don't have a wider vision than that of how do we make this sustainable to young people because your grandfather's in charge and it's your grandfather's idea of what that game he grew up on should be. And Chris, I don't need to explain to you how bad grandfathers are at evolving. I don't need to explain to you as he sits next to me every day. This is what's in charge of baseball and deciding what should be next on baseball. Most of the owners are your father's age.
Chris wanted ponds in the outfield. How are you talking about?
I was just trying to help. We were discussing how to
we doing
potentially fix baseball, but I think it's fine the way it is.
It's,
A red zone channel would be good for baseball too.
really? How can you predict?
They have that. If you
do. It's a whip around show, and it worked on one final playoff day that was kind of unprecedented in its nature, where it was exciting again. I think that it's kind of weird to point to a minor, an independent league team in Savannah and go to the New York Yankees and say, do more of that. But the Savannah Bananas are massive in Savannah, Georgia. It's a party. It's a destination. And just going to a baseball game isn't a fun endeavor anymore. I like going to Petco. You know why? Because it has a playground in center field, and I don't watch the game. You have to make the games events again.
By the way, I'm an old guy who's been following baseball since 1967. My first heroes in any sport were Yastrzemski and Willie Mays. I should be baseball's demographic. I think the sport is dull and boring. So if I think at my age that baseball needs to move forward and be quicker and not be as boring, that is a problem for baseball because there are a lot of people just like me. Didn't the Marlins a couple of years ago try to partyize the games by putting that thing in that like nightclub or whatever it was in right field? It didn't work.
It was the Clevelander.
Yeah, but I
Left
went
field,
to it.
and it was in left field.
It was the Clevelander, and we had a party for Edwin Pope there.
I know,
and
that was a beautiful
But
thing.
that's the problem. We're having parties for Edwin Pope.
I went to the games, so.
No, but there was also...
I went to the games when they had the Clevelander
Hank
out there.
was
I went
there.
to like 4 games. I didn't watch a single second
Hammer.
of baseball, and a
Okay,
good
but
time
no-
was had by
Yeah,
all.
the Budweiser bar is still there. The one that's on the second level, that's still there in left field. There
Okay.
was the Clevelander like club
Right.
with the pool, that's gone now.
It ain't working, whatever it is. The point is, it's not gimmickry that's going to bring back baseball fans. It's going to be a quicker, shorter, more exciting game.
Yeah, but you can't change the game. That's like
Yes, you
saying
can.
that's
Yes,
like
you
saying
can.
golf
Yes, you
takes
can.
too
Yes,
long,
you
so
can.
let's play 12 holes.
No, Chris.
Like baseball's baseball.
I've taken my
You
kids to
can't make
games.
pitchers pitchers need
Yes.
to take the time they need to throw the pitches.
Chris,
like we're not
the
speeding
thing
this
my
game
kids
up.
are least interested in when they're at the game is the actual game. It's slow. It's boring. Like Mike's right. You got
So
to find
putting a
entertainment
concert, so
for
putting a
'em.
concert in center field is going to help the sport of baseball. That no one. So you're
Yes.
you're admittedly saying I'm going there. I'm not watching a second of the game.
Yes.
Let's grow the
Yeah.
sport by
Yeah.
just putting a concert
Yeah,
in center
it,
field.
it worked for cricket.
That's to
Yep.
get them more money, but that's not helping like fans become baseball fans.
I know we're like stuck in our bubble here, but cricket, which had a long tradition and a very boring, slow-paced game,
Preach.
had to actually shorten their games and make it more commercially appealing. And the games are fun to attend. I'm just saying, make it an event. And people, maybe out of every 7 drunk dudes that goes there for a good time to not watch the game, maybe you get one of them to be like, hey, this guy is pretty interesting to watch. Let me follow his story. You saw how I couldn't name a baseball player. To give you an example, the first name that came to mind was Ricky Weeks. I think he stopped playing 15 years ago.
Always a great source of steals, though, for fantasy. Richie Weeks, yeah.
Put this on the
It's,
poll,
Ricky.
please, at LeBatard
Fine.
Show. Was Ricky Weeks always a great source of steals in fantasy? Did it work for cricket? And is baseball a party at your grandma's house? Because I think that's what Mike is requesting. Mike right now wants to crash the door to Meemaw's house and have a party. It's the party thrown by your grandparents. But they've got the latest. They've got the latest in technology somehow.
And they're about to blow a 3-1 lead because they were at the forefront of integrating gambling into this sport and welcoming those betting partners. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit more later today. And also streaming. They made buku bucks on being at the forefront of that. And I think they're blowing this lead. They have a sport that really lends itself to having a good time around the event, and they're doing nothing with it.
I want to read something to you here that comes in via Twitter. You could always reach the show at LeBatard Show, and then we will take that and make fun of ourselves with it. I like to think that I get the show as a longtime listener, but since leaving ESPN, it's like they, or maybe just Mike, has to go out and prove themselves. You don't. You've got an insanely loyal base. You don't need a musical to continue. The echo chamber of what's said on the show.
Is that guy?
How the hell's the musical an echo chamber?
No idea. Let's all start singing right now.
It's a reverb.
What would you like to sing?
I don't know. It's got to be a chorus. You know, my theory has always been, and I would love to ask JT Daly this because I believe it. Here's a room with, 15, 12 people in it. Individually, we all have lousy voices. None of us is a trained singer. But if we harmonized in a choir and actually knew the lyrics enough to sing in time, it would sound great.
Give us a sentence or a couple of sentences that we can sing together as a show and count us down. And let's test live on the air for our audience your theory that we as a group can sound great as long as it is all
Something
of us.
we all know.
Give us a couple of sentences.
All
of
right,
what it is.
all right, 2 lines. Raindrops keep falling on my head, just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed. We all know that song, right?
No.
No?
What was the second part?
No.
I know the first line.
Raindrops
Keep falling on my head, just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed. Nothing seems to fit.
Wait, now you're throwing too much at me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's start again.
What's a song called? Let's all just pull up the lyrics.
It's called Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head.
Okay, hold on.
Just a moment
I'll
here.
have to do this. Thank
Raindrops
you.
Yeah.
Who sang that, Greg? What year?
Egos?
Oh, boy.
On my head.
I think it was B.J. Thomas.
It is
Oh, yeah,
B.J.
good
Thomas.
job,
It is
yeah.
B.J. Thomas. His video has come up. It is in black and white. B.J. Thomas's video.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're ready on this. Let's see. Let's get all this together.
Hold up.
Oh, wow. It's R falling on my head. I could swear it's keep falling.
Yeah.
It starts at raindrops.
There is
are
a keep
falling
later
on my
in the
head.
song.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Well, let's read it
They
as
have
is.
to. They
Yeah.
have to start falling
Well, that's
before
nice
they
of
can
you.
keep
Yeah,
falling.
as is. Yeah.
Okay, so we're just reading the first 4 lines, right?
Singing though.
You know,
Singing,
let's
yeah.
just take it till it
Let's
stops.
let's see how far it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Count
You got to
us
count us
Count us
down,
down,
Greg.
Greg,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
You're the leader here, Greg.
Okay, I go 1, 2, 3, and as soon as I've said the word 3,
3,
we
2,
start
1.
singing.
We start on
playing
3.
rock, paper,
All
No,
right,
do 1, 2, 3,
would be
go.
better.
Do 1, 2, 3, go.
Is it rock, paper, scissors?
Okay,
1, 2, 3, go.
Do we go on go or after go?
six.
Wait,
Four,
can you
five, six.
actually go
Let's
3, 2,
go on
1,
six.
go?
5,
Six, right,
6.
easy.
There you go. Yeah, you got to
Just-
start there in the middle, like
Just
Chris
count to
did.
7. Just
Yeah,
count to
5,
7.
6, 7,
7
8.
Mississippi.
Which way?
Yeah.
4, 5,
6, 7, 8, go.
Raindrops.
Wait, no, we didn't start. No. You start on 5 when you count to 8. You don't start on 1.
I have the,
5,
I have
6,
the little
7.
There you go.
We should eliminate the go.
Rain.
Whose idea was that?
Or you just go 2, 3, 4, and you skip the 1. You always got to skip a number in
Go
music.
on the number.
You guys are an awful choir.
Always
Yeah.
said that.
This is
Don't-
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Christopher used to be in a professional choir. He's the
Really?
one-
It was in
Yeah.
5th grade. It was
Can you lead us?
tropical
Count us down.
elementary.
Give us
Can
the
you
count.
lead us,
5,
Chris?
6, 5, 6,
Oh,
7, 8.
Raindrops are falling on my head, And just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit.
Those
Raindrops are falling on my head.
They keep
falling.
He was right.
Do you guys not know this song?
Fell apart.
You want to start again?
The song was released in
What is this? The
1969.
Damn
fourth
right it
line.
was.
Yeah, sing that fourth line.
Yeah,
Right.
how does that fourth line
Well,
go?
What's your
you
song
gotta
you'd go
skip a
for to be
beat.
the most ubiquitous amongst the group?
What?
It's
You sing it
nothing
first, Greg.
seems to fit. Pause. Those raindrops are falling on my head.
Okay.
They keep falling.
All right, all we're trying to get is that first lyric together. Are you
Yeah,
ready?
the
But
first
I
four
think we have
lines.
some
And then we'll
trouble.
move on to the second four.
I
So there's a
think we-
pause after fit, right, Greg?
And then
Yes.
those. And then there's a
after
pause.
Those, after those, there's a little breath.
5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Raindrops are falling on my head.
And
Just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head. They keep falling.
He's right. He is right.
All right. Let's do Fucking Problems by A$AP Rocky next.